Hello, my name is Shannon King, and this is my video reflection for Real-Time Environments Unit 11650. And in this video, I will be showcasing my entire project from start to finish, the methods, techniques, and processes used to create my scene. I initially set out to create a Skaven-infested cave filled with guts, gore, and more in Unreal 5.1, but I changed the idea throughout the development process, keeping elements of Skaven Cave in mind, but toning the idea back to a more beautiful, fulfilling scene over a highly cluttered one. In the new version of my scene, I wanted to take full advantage of negative space and visual storytelling, and this was an attempt to drive the player to further explore areas of the cave that aren't as obvious. I also didn't want to encourage the player to ignore sections and elements of my scene due to the overwhelming amount of stuff that I could have in my scene. Here we can see how my scene started. I initially started my project by researching different images and creating mood boards of scenes and levels that inspired me. Most of my images originated from a concept artist who worked on Warhammer Vermintide 2, Robert Berg. While referring to other artists' works for my scene, I also created my own concepts. I had intended to create more concepts, but I felt this singular concept gave me a fairly good idea on where to start and how to create my assets in my scene. From the get-go, I knew the amount of work I had to do for this scene. I had a really good idea on the scale and the amount of assets I would need to complete it. Unlike my VR project from last semester, I came in far more prepared and with a better idea. Now I knew what I was doing. As you can see from the video playing, I started the scene with a landscape and I used my concept to carve out a rough shape of what I wanted in my scene. I also used 3 different types of rocks at various scales and shapes to create the walls and roofs. I also made the light greener instead of leaving it a standard blue, because I felt the greener look created a stronger contrast of colours. I created all my assets in Blender and textured them in Substance Painter. For the rocks I used a basic sculpting brushes to stretch and pull the rock into a rough shape that I liked. Then I finalised it with a subdivision modifier and multiple wave modifiers to give them a more organic and randomised feel. You can see this example playing in the video now. In Substance Painter, I created a series of smart materials to fill out the textures for all of my assets. So majority of my assets are actually using the same smart materials with just slightly different or randomized values. And I did this because it saved a lot of time during the production process of this project. As you can see in this version of the scene, everything is starting to come together. Along with this, I've included various visual effects, and I changed the overall shape of my scene greatly from the original concept I drew in week 1. I've included a sewer system, along with changing the overall shape of the pillar positions and cave. I also removed the big portal pit from the original concept, as I felt that this would take away from the scene instead of being an additive, because it blocks the beautiful waterfall view as well as the river below. I created all the VFX using Unreal's inbuilt particle system. I used Unreal's GPU renderer over the CPU renderer, because this GPU renderer is a little bit more efficient and allows more exploration for the volume of particles we have in the scene. The greatest challenge I faced while creating these particle systems was stopping them from being hyper emissive and standing way out and looking super unrealistic. I feel like I've achieved a strong balance between fantasy and realism though. The particles still glow and look like they're magic, but at the same time they look like they're realistic and fit the world. All the decals found within my scene are created using Photoshop and Substance Painter. The Skaven symbols found all over my scene I hand painted in Photoshop while referring to online examples of the Skaven alphabet Queekish. The rest of the textures were created in Substance Painter using a plain mesh with a flat UV and a similar process to what I did with the smart materials. Here is a final look at my scene. I put a lot of effort into making my cave not look like intestines. Thanks, Henry. I believe my scene came out looking great. It contains various details and small storytelling elements, and overall I believe it is very visually pleasing without being overwhelming to the viewer. Majority of the assets in my scene I created. There is only 2 key assets that I didn't actually create. The landscape texture is an example of this. The landscape features 3 different textures, all grabbed from Quixel. with the micro and macro variations in the material editor planted on top. And I did this because using 3 different textures with macro and micro variation, we can create a very unique landscape look where there's no tiling and it's perfectly seamless. Along with this, there's a set of trees out the front entrance of the cave. The player cannot see them, but I just needed them to create shadows and create more unique raycast bounces. These trees are just a set of default trees from the speed tree package. In conclusion, I'm happy with how my scene turned out. I'm not sure what more I could add or change to the scene. I'm not saying that my scene is perfect, but I'm very happy with it. Right now as it is. And if I don't stop working on it now, I will never finish with my scene and I'll always want to add more and more and more. I'd like to thank everyone who gave me advice and suggestions for changes along the way. Thank you for watching.